Throwdown Nation. It is episode 63. It is a Tuesday night, and we are live and streaming on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter/X, Facebook, and Twitch. This is a cool moment. Tonight, we are throwing down with someone on the West Coast who is lighting up the scene in California, the Enterprise, Robin Shaw. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm pretty good. It's a lot of light. It's still light out here, so that's pretty nice. But
Oh, for
overall,
sure.
pretty good. Mhm.
Very good. What part of California are you in?
I live in San Diego.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Southern California. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just for anybody that's watching live, if you have any questions or comments, throw them in the chat, and periodically we'll take a look at the chat and kind of do a rolling viewer Q&A session as things go on. But we'll go ahead and get started with the first and really the most obvious question, Robin, and that is, how long have you been wrestling?
It'll be 8 years in February. So I started in late. I started training in 2016, and then I had my first match in 2017.
So you've been doing this for a bit. Yeah.
Some would say too long.
Yeah, because I think you can sort of take a wrestler, and it's like dog years. Just the wear and tear it puts on you. It definitely will put some mileage on your body and your soul.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was gonna say maybe soul more than body. I've knock on wood. I've been lucky in that I haven't really been hurt too much, but like, uh, it's an exhausting, emotionally draining. It's worth it. Yeah, it wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't worth it, but it is a
Absolutely.
lot sometimes.
Right. Right. So who actually trained you?
So I originally was trained at the Millennium Wrestling Academy in Moorpark, California. Now it's in Chatsworth, California. Primarily under Seth Skyfire, who was in OVW in the mid 2000s. He was tag team partners with CM Punk.
Oh,
But
okay.
I've been trained by a lot of people. Ray Rosas is also from out here. Um, yeah, tons and tons of people, but primarily Seth Skyfire.
Got you. Got you. So in the early stages of your training, what would you say was the most challenging part? What was the thing that was the biggest challenge to wrap your mind and your body around?
Um, I mean, the actual training part, other than yes, it's physically demanding. That part was pretty easy for me. It was mostly just like finding the time to get there because at the time I was in college full time and working not quite full time, but mostly full time. Like I had a lot on my plate at the time when I was training. So I was
Right.
just juggling everything on top of, this is something I was passionate about and really wanted to do. So it was more the time management aspect of it, which luckily I've always been pretty good at. But that's mostly it.
Got you. Well, something I didn't really have a chance to tell you before we got started. When we do these, we do this thing called the speed round game. And what that is I've got a list of 10 names, and periodically I'll stop and I'll say speed round, and I'll name a name, and you just tell me the first thing that pops into your head. It's basically a sort of a word association type of thing. So,
Mhm.
speed round, Ric Flair.
Second greatest of all time,
Who's the first in your mind?
Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, I won't argue that. I won't argue that. Yeah, but you know, I'm in Atlanta, and coming from the South, I'm a Flair guy. So I
Oh, for
mean,
sure.
they're yeah, but I agree with you. It's definitely a one and two. It kind of depends on the day of the week and the hour of the day.
Yeah, to me, it's between them two and Terry Funk. It all kind of alternates between the three of them for me.
Oh, for sure.
Mhm.
One of my favorite matches of all time actually was from back in 1989. on a Clash of the Champions episode, there was an I Quit match between Flair and Funk, and
Oh
that
yeah,
was a
that's
master class in storytelling.
I show that to my students all the time.
Yeah, great match, absolutely amazing. So, and again, this is kind of harkening back to the early stages of your training. What would you say was the most valuable lesson that you learned in the early portion of training, and something that you would pass along to a new trainee?
Have fun. As weird as that sounds, is you hear a lot of horror stories about people going through training and how miserable they are. And for me, with Skyfire, it was always very much like he was cracking jokes the entire time. So
Hmm.
it became very important to like enjoy the process, enjoy that you're going and doing all this. Because if you just sit there and are miserable the whole time, then what's the point? I mean, most of us are not making a lot of money. Most of us are not really. It is just a lot of wear and tear. So to me, it's like if you're not having fun, what the hell are you doing?
Exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
So I was just noticing somebody in the YouTube chat named Lupita Alcala put the comment up WWE Edgar. I don't know if that means anything to you.
No, I have no idea.
Okay. Okay. Let's see here. So I'm presuming you've probably been a fan of this stuff the majority of your life. Is that accurate?
Yeah, since I was about 7 or 8. So when it was really popular in the Attitude Era is when I became a fan. So late
Gotcha.
'99. Yeah.
Gotcha. What would you say is your earliest wrestling related memory?
So this is before I really became a fan, but I distinctly remember watching the like pre-show of the King of the Ring '98.
Hmm.
I don't really remember why or the context. I distinctly remember that thing. But then the earliest memory I have, like, of when I became a fan was was when Triple H married Stephanie.
Oh yeah.
I distinctly remember watching that episode. But yeah, it's a weird memory to have, but that's the one I have.
Yeah, it's funny. I became a fan around the age of 11 as a kid in Florida at the time, and like I said, I'm in the Atlanta area now, but and I just turned 55 a couple of months ago, so I've been following this stuff for 40 plus years, and my earliest memories, as a kid watching Florida Championship Wrestling back then, Gordon Soley was the commentator. We're talking a long time ago, and the earliest feud that I remember was Dusty Rhodes and Kevin Sullivan.
Mhm.
And back when Kevin Sullivan had the whole satanic gimmick going on, and it
Mhm.
was it was fun. But man, when you're 11 years old, Kevin Sullivan was a scary dude. I mean,
For sure. Yeah, I watch a lot of old wrestling now, so like a lot of that
mhm.
stuff is I'm super into. A lot
Oh
of my
yeah,
style and everything. I steal very liberally from the 80s, 70s and 80s. But like it's crazy because like what I grew up with was so ridiculous that obviously quote unquote wasn't real. So like going back then and seeing how like no people thought this was a shoot like it,
yeah.
it's it really I've always joked that, like when I have a because I've wrestled in the South twice now, and both times I'm like I want to make someone so mad that a grandma tries to stab me because that's the type of what it used to be like. So
Oh yeah,
uh, mhm,
absolutely.
mhm.
So was there a point in your life that you can remember? It may not necessarily have been a distinct point, but was there a point in your life where you basically looked at the TV and you were like, I think I could do this?
So yes and no. Obviously, I always wanted to as a little kid, but like growing up, like I was never unathletic, but I was always like the fat kid. So like it never really dawned on me this idea. But like me and my friends all backyard wrestled the whole, shebang. And one of my friends who was pretty athletic, played football in high school, like he was the one that we all kind of pegged as like he's the one that's gonna do this. And he did train for a little bit, but then he had to stop because of his he had to stop because he got married and was unavailable,
Ah,
unable to train as much.
yeah,
So he kind of like did a little bit and then tailed off. And then it was about a year or two after that is when I decided that I was going to do it. And for me, it was never like I'm going to go try to make it and do all this stuff. It's like, you know what, I want to try this because
yeah,
just to scratch the itch. I fully expected my first day of training to take one bump and be like, I'm never doing this again. And the opposite happened.
yeah,
Mhm,
absolutely.
mhm.
So, speed round. Devon Dudley.
What's up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So, so away from wrestling, what are some of your other hobbies and interests?
History. I have a degree in history.
I do too.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. I wish I was using it more, but getting a history teacher job is difficult. um, but yeah, history is one of them. College football. I've been playing a lot of the college football video game. But really, I don't have a lot of time between having a 18-month-old son, another baby on the way, and pro wrestling. Like it's hard for me to have a lot of time to do other stuff.
Right, right. Yeah, that's interesting that you're a history buff. I got my degree in history, but I mean, what I've done my entire career has nothing at all to do with history. So I mean, it gave me a great liberal arts type of background, but I mean, what I do is entirely removed from from anything history related, but still love history.
Hmm. You learn to write really well, so if
Oh, for
nothing else, you have
sure.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, is there anything in particular that you are either watching or listening to right now, just in the area of pop culture?
My wife and I have been watching Young Sheldon because I never got into it. I like Big Bang Theory a lot when I was younger, and then kind of fell out
Mhm.
of it. But it's been a good little show to watch. But actively, no, just sports with all the college football stuff going on. Yeah,
Um,
football in general. My team sucks though, so
who's your team?
the Patriots. So following the
Oh,
NFL isn't as fun now.
gotcha. What about college?
uh, Being from Southern California and not really having a strong attachment to USC, I kind of just like attach myself to multiple teams because you can in college. Michigan and Alabama are the two that I tend to gravitate to the most, and Boise State. I really hope they do well in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to, but we'll see.
Yeah, my wife is actually a University of Alabama graduate, so I'm a Bama
Oh,
fan by marriage.
oh,
Where,
perfect.
where, where I went to college, we actually didn't even have football, but so I
Same.
mean, I've kind of attached myself to Bama, and this season has been a humbling experience. We're missing Nick Saban for sure.
Imagine being 9-3 and thinking that you're bad.
Yeah, I know, but
It's like, I mean, I'm a Patriots fan, so like I get it, but like my team's actually bad now.
yeah, I mean, in the great scheme of things, 9-3 is actually really good. But when you're
For
used
sure.
to Bama level success, it's not.
Yes, of
So,
course.
so, so anyway, so are you originally from California?
Yeah, I grew up in Los Angeles.
Okay. So, what is your favorite thing about San Diego?
The weather. It sure isn't the cost of living. Yeah, no, the weather's beautiful. Compared to LA, the traffic's not nearly as bad. It's still pretty bad, but it's not nearly as bad. Pretty much where I live, everything that isn't like good is 20 minutes away, like period. Like mountains are close, desert's close, Mexico's close, the beach is close. Like it's very nice how easy it is to get around here.
Absolutely. But I've never been to California. Um, I've been to Washington State, actually a couple of times, but I've never made it to California.
Mm.
One of these days, and I've never actually seen the Pacific Ocean. So one of these days, I'm going to get back out there and actually dip my toes in the Pacific. So
I never saw the Atlantic Ocean until a few months ago. So
really,
yeah, my wife and I were kicking around the idea of moving to Florida. So we went and like visited houses because my dad recently moved there.
hmm,
And I was like, oh, there's the ocean's on the wrong side now.
yeah. Well, if you're in Florida, the ocean's on both sides.
That's
I
true.
mean, so
Where I was, it was on the wrong
yeah,
side.
right,
Mhm.
right. So, they say that the best wrestling personas are essentially yourself turned up to 11.
Mhm.
So, tell me about the Enterprise. Tell me about in-ring Robin and kind of compare and contrast him with everyday you.
So there's definitely aspects of my personality that are turned up for sure. I'm not actually filthy rich, unfortunately. So that's the main thing that's different. But in terms of like the sarcasm, the humor that I try to inject in my wrestling, um, there's a running gag at the wrestling school I help teach at of like quote unquote Shaw mad, and I just channel that when I'm wrestling. So um, yeah, it is very much me turned up. Turn the right dials up. If I'm ever on the random occasion a babyface, I try to be more magnanimous. But for the most part, it's just how can I be the worst version of me? Mhm,
Absolutely.
mhm.
So, speed round. Johnny Gargano.
He's okay. I Yeah, I don't think he's bad, but I don't, to me, he's never been like my cup of tea. Um,
Hmm.
and again, I've been watching wrestling and indie wrestling forever, so I saw him even before he was in WWE. And he's good. Like I just
Yeah,
not my thing. Mhm.
gotcha, gotcha. So, tell us about your very first match. What was it like? How did it go? What were your thoughts coming into it and your thoughts coming out of it? You're laughing. So there's obviously a story here.
So my first 10 or so matches. So my training was very different than some people. I trained for 6 weeks and had my first match.
Oh
Now I've heard
wow.
this story. I've heard this story from other people that it's not that abnormal, but like I, it was very much there was a 7-year-old having a birthday party, and they're like, "We need someone to wrestle. Here's a mask." So I was the bigger banana for my first 10 or so matches. And my first match, they give me this mask, they give me a yellow shirt, I wore some biker shorts, and I went out there and I wrestled the owner of the company because they didn't have enough people. So they just did whatever they could. It was the first time I'd ever learned to take a move from the top rope was in my first match. um, Luckily, it's pretty self-explanatory. It was definitely so. Yes, of course, I was nervous, and I don't recommend most people get thrown into the fire that way. But I think, in the grand scheme of things, the way that I got trained and was like brought in was the way that it was best for me. Because to me, it's like if you challenge me directly, I'm much more likely to rise to the occasion. Um,
Right.
but in general, most people train for at least like a year before you have your first match. Because I didn't have a good match until I was at least a year and a half in.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
But like you said, though, sometimes kind of getting thrown to the wolves, so to speak, is not a bad thing. It really depends on the person and the situation, And
Absolutely. Mhm.
it sounds like in your case, being children's birthday party entertainment, at least the audience wasn't gonna like uh, burn the building down if you stunk up the place.
Yeah,
So
they didn't know any better anyway.
yeah.
Yeah, the school that I was trained at, they had weekly shows. So
Hmm.
because I did halfway decent at this birthday party, they started using me on the weekly shows.
Oh,
Again,
that's cool.
it was mostly just in the get beat up as a banana role, but
Right.
that
You
was,
were you were enhancement talent.
absolutely. Which it's hard to be enhancement talent when you're 300 pounds, but that's what I was.
Gotcha. So we've heard about the first matches. So now tell us about your favorite match that you've been a part of, if you can
uh,
narrow it down to one or two.
Yeah, so I every year I do a top 10 list of my favorite matches. Usually it's for sentimental reasons, not necessarily for quality reasons, but the two that jump out to me the most in I'm gonna get probably sidetracked with some of this is
Go.
just recently
That's fine.
the number one match I had this year was the
Hmm.
Skyfire Boys versus the Pump Line. It was at Skyfire Pro Lucha Libre, which was my promotion, named after my trainer. I was a promoter, booker, all of the above. And we decided to end the company and kind of so we could focus more on the school we have. And as part of that match, we did a whole storyline with me and two of the guys I trained with, all under South Skyfire, the Brothers Divine. The three of us all teamed up. We were the Skyfire Boys. We wrestled, three people that I helped train. And if they beat us, I would lose the company. If we beat them, they get fired. We lost, but that match is very, very near and dear to my heart because of how connected I am to all five other people in that match. And that match definitely meant a lot to me. Another match I had earlier this year was a steel cage match for the Skyfire Pro Championship. Me being the evil owner, trying to take the belt too. I lost that. I lose a lot. I lost that one too. Um, Another one was a little further back. One of the brothers Divine, Brendan Divine, and I have had a lot of really good matches. And match we had at MPW, the school I was at back in 2022. Yeah, that sounds about right. That match is probably the best match I've ever had if I had to like rank them in terms of like quality.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I've had quite a few matches that mean a lot to me. Especially now that I'm further in, I have a little more control over what I'm doing, so that's nice. And it makes it easier to kind of set up those things to be more important.
Gotcha. So what is the longest distance you have ever driven to get to a match?
Well, that depends. Do you count how much in one day? Because if you do that, I from here to Fresno is like 400 miles, and then I would do that and come back in the same day. I've done
Oh
LA to
wow.
Phoenix. Like it's so I'm assuming most of your guests are on the East Coast, where like there is a
Yeah.
lot, everything's a lot more condensed. So I think those like 10-hour drives are a lot more common. Whereas out west, like it does happen and everything's so much more spread out that like the idea of driving anywhere is a much bigger proposition. So like if I were to wrestle in San Francisco, that's an 8-hour drive. And that's
Right.
still in California, from where I am
Yeah.
currently. Um, so it's like it's harder to kind of quantify in terms of that. But a lot of times I would do, Fresno, which is almost San Francisco. I do that and back in the same day.
Whew,
I did LA
man.
to Phoenix a lot, which is about a 5-hour drive there, 5-hour back. We used to joke because I used to be on Championship Wrestling from Arizona, and we would do the whole trip. and it was a TV taping, so we'd have to be there really early for setup, and then
Hmm.
stay for the whole show. And sometimes they're filming 3 or 4 episodes, so we're there for 5 hours just for the show, and
Right.
then 5 hours back. We're having a 24-hour day.
Yeah. Makes
um,
makes for a long, long, long day.
exactly. But I know, like back east, I hear the stories of guys that are driving from Oklahoma to Tennessee and then back, and I'm like, that's insane. Um, but at least there, like, there's stuff in between that you can kind of get
Right.
to, whereas like doing loops out here is a lot harder.
Yeah.
Because everything's more condensed into these small areas. So like there'd be 5 shows in LA, but they're all within like 20 miles of each other. But then the
Right.
next closest thing is 200 miles away.
Absolutely. So, and I know everybody has them, but what is your biggest in-ring pet peeve?
Bypasses. Do you know what I mean by that? It's the lucha. The guy runs at you and you just move out the way like you're a
Oh,
matador. Yeah,
yeah.
I hate that. When I'm teaching my classes, I'm like, don't do that. It doesn't make sense. Like, no one does it where it looks good. I know like 2 or 3
Right.
wrestlers, and they're usually like really good high level luchadors that can do it where it kind of looks like something. I'm like,
Yeah.
just throw a clothesline. I can move
Yeah.
out of the way. It looks so much better.
Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. So I know that there are sort of two and a half different ways of preparing for a match. You can either work it out with your opponent in the back, you can call it in the ring, or you can sort of do a hybrid where it's a little bit of both. What's your preference?
Man, you're making me break all the rules. um, I generally a hybrid of the two. I think most people who say they call it all in the ring don't actually know what they're doing, and they're lying.
Yeah.
um, but I also think that pre-planning every single thing is also wrong. So I definitely think you need to be somewhere in the middle. But I know plenty of people that pre-plan everything that do everything great. So, but that's so few and far between. And to me, it's going back to like that's kills the fun of it. If I have to remember everything, I'm not going to be able to organically, interact with the audience the way that I would like to. But like I said, most people that are like, I call it all in the ring, like you don't actually know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or like you said, you're lying. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Yes.
Speed round. Leo Rush.
Uh, Pretty good. I don't. I just always remember the thing with Joey Janela where they did the pile driver off the ladder and
Oh
they just
yeah.
got back up. Like I didn't like that.
Yeah.
But most of his work is really good and he's very talented.
Gotcha. So this question I'm going to ask, and I imagine working in California and the Southwest, you've probably run into these type of situations. And that is, if you've worked in other countries or cultures, how have you handled language barriers when interacting with other talent or even the fans?
So I've never actually worked in Mexico, which I really should do that. It's only 20 minutes away. um, but obviously there is a lot of lucha heavy shows and such out here.
Right.
I've never really had that issue with fans. Usually the fans out here at least have enough English that I don't, and I can get away with just being like, because I know enough Spanish living in
Right.
California. Um, I know when they're cussing at me.
Yeah.
um, but I only have one match that I can think of where the people I were wrestling, or one of the people in the match, just did not speak English or spoke very little English.
Hmm.
And it was a tag match, and the other two people did, so they were translating for me. But it was definitely a difficult process. The match was not very good, but that's just it's not only trying to translate English to Spanish, it's also trying to translate lucha to American wrestling, which is a whole nother
Oh yeah.
conversation. And this was like an old luchador, so it's like it's even more different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you could only be one, would you rather be great in the ring or great on the mic?
Great on the mic, more money.
Yeah.
You can be bad at in the ring.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
But
Let
if
me
you can
preface.
talk, yeah.
Are am I bad or am I passable in the ring?
Well, you're passable.
Okay, then yeah, I'll take that
I'm
all
not
day.
saying I'm not saying that I'm just saying you could be passable in the ring, but great on the mic, or passable on the mic, or great in the ring. I'm not saying you're terrible at one or the other. I'm just saying if you could be great at one or the other, which would it be? And you said
Well,
on the mic.
I'm already passable in the ring, so great on the mic.
Yeah. So, what has been your most unusual encounter with a fan?
Hmm. Here's a good story.
Okay.
So this guy, he's kind of a fan, but also like he thinks he's in, or he was. So this guy used to do security at the old MPW shows, the weekly ones I used to do, but he never really was a wrestler or involved. He just would show up, and the owner was like, "Yeah, you can do security, I guess." Um, and he's definitely like on the spectrum, special needs, but like my wife, my now wife, was my girlfriend at the time. She would always come to the shows and she'd help with, help him the door and things like that. And we were there really early once, and my wife didn't had no interest in wrestling until we started dating.
Hmm.
And she over like we're having this conversation, this guy is just there, and I walked away for a second. My wife comes up to me and she's like, "Hey, this guy said something about me being a ring rat," and
Oh,
I lost my shit.
no
um,
doubt.
yeah, and my wife, to her
Mm,
credit, she had no idea what that meant, so she
yeah.
wasn't really upset. But I storm out, and one of my boys is coming after me like, "I don't know what you're mad about, but I'm coming." And I just go up to this guy, and again, had he not been special needs, I probably would have whooped his ass. But I just said, "If you ever say that again, I swear to God, I'm punching you." And he like backed off immediately. So that, and I mean, just the run of the mill weirdos asking to buy your gear and take foot pics, the normal stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So, what does your wife think about all this? You said she wasn't a fan until you guys started dating. What does she think about all of it now?
I think she wants me to stop sometimes. um, Generally, she's very supportive.
Hmm.
But obviously it's a very big time commitment, so I can understand, wanting to wanting to chill sometimes with it. And I've scaled back a lot, especially since my son was born.
Right.
But generally very supportive. And she's become more of an insight on wrestling than most people realize, in terms of understanding. She used to like go to the training classes with me just to like hang out, and she became friends with my trainer's wife, and like so she knows more about wrestling psychology than a lot of wrestlers do. It's very interesting.
Gotcha. It's funny. My wife is anything but a wrestling fan, and and we've been married, gosh, 26 years now, and I started doing these live streams. The wrestling side of it, I started back in July, and she's watched the majority of these, and while she is still not a fan, she actually was telling me recently that she now understands why I am, which I feel like that's progress. She at
Oh,
least
absolutely.
she at least kind of gets it now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, yeah. So it's all a good thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So think I know the answer to this because we sort of briefly touched on this topic earlier. But do you have a preference working heel or babyface? I think you like being a heel.
I think that I'm more naturally suited to it. I always tell everyone I like to scratch the itch of being a babyface because like I can do it, and I think that I'm pretty good at that too. But like I'm definitely it's a lot easier and more natural to my character and my style to be a heel, especially like in California. Like you don't get a lot of near 400-pound, 6 foot monster guys that can talk. Most of the guys that I've taught are 190-pound little guys. So it's hard for them to beat me up and for people to feel bad for me. So it's a lot easier for me to just, I'm going to be the one to beat you up.
Right.
But there's times where I definitely love to be the baby face. Like I love being a baby face in tag matches primarily.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started,
And being the face in peril and all that.
yeah, well, generally,
Yeah.
I'm Robert Gibson. I'm not Ricky Morton.
Gotcha.
I'm the one coming in to House of Fire.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. um, but yeah, like when I first started working on television for United Wrestling Network, like that was the
Mm-hmm.
role I was in, was the big guy in the babyface tag team. Like there is something
Gotcha.
really fun about that, but generally, yeah, I think I'm better as a heel. Again, because I help write my own show. Like I know what my strengths are. I know what my roles should be. So
Gotcha. So and I know these situations happen a lot more than most people realize, but can you share an example of a time where something went sideways during a match and you really and truly had to improvise?
well, the improvised part is all the time.
Well, yeah, yeah.
There's one particular match that happened where I wouldn't really say that like it fell apart and we had to improvise. It just the entire everything that could have went wrong went wrong.
Hmm.
So the name The Enterprise comes from an old tag team / faction that I was part of. And as it was falling apart, I had a match with one of my former tag partner, Cameron August. And this match was something that we had built to for months. And it was going to be this big, big, epic encounter. And we get out there, and literally from the very first thing, everything goes wrong. Like the very first spot we had just didn't happen. The ropes were loose, and like he fell out of the ring when he wasn't supposed to. Like it was like
Oh
one thing
no.
after another. Luckily, nobody got hurt. But just everything that could have went wrong in this match. And again, this is a match that we had been like building to. It was supposed to be this epic, showdown, and that is not what happened. To the point where, because I helped write the show, I told the guy that was doing the video editing, do not put that match out. And that match is just missing from the show. And the only people who have access to it are me and Cam, and that's it.
So Mr. Murphy was in full effect.
Yes. I was like, this doesn't exist. What match?
Exactly.
And the funny thing is when I watched it back, it's bad, but it's not nearly as bad as it felt in the ring.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I'm still glad I was like, don't put this out. But at least when I watched it back, I'm like, okay, this was okay.
Right. So, do you have an all-time favorite match as a fan? A match that you can have watched it a million times and it just never gets old, and there's always some new little nugget you can pull from it.
More than one. The one we talked about, Terry Funk and Ric Flair. That's
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Kurt Angle, Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 21. That's another one. Brett and Austin, both Undertaker and Shawn Michaels WrestleMania matches.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to get deep, Kenta Kobashi and Misawa. I prefer their 2003 one and Noah personally. Um, yeah, there's all kinds of matches that I could be like, these are my favorite matches. It's hard for me to just be like, this is the one.
Right, right.
If you gun to my head, I'll probably say Kurt and Sean. But yeah.
Gotcha. Speed round. Hiroshi Tanahashi.
Oh, one of the best. One of the best ever. He's so good. I almost think he's underrated.
Yeah, I will agree with you there. Yeah, I mean, he was one of the first talents I saw when I started watching New Japan, and I was just blown away. You know, I was like, "Who is this guy, and why have I never heard of him before?" So,
because nobody watched New Japan in the late 2000s.
right, right.
Because he was there. Him and
Oh
Nakamura
yeah,
were both killing it, and it wasn't until it really started blowing up that people really saw how good they were. Because them, Nakamura, and then Okada obviously are all excellent.
yeah, yeah. You know, speaking of Nakamura, I am so hopeful that they're finally going to do something decent with him in WWE. I'm kind of digging this new persona they're sort of doing with him right now, and I hope they don't do what they've kind of had a history of doing these last several years and sort of starting to build him up and then he just disappears again. You know, I feel like the guy deserves better than what he's for the most part gotten in WWE.
I feel like it's kind of bad juju for me to comment too much directly on like WWE TV and their writing process because I don't really know.
Right.
When it comes to Nakamura, my personal view on it is it's not entirely on the writer's fault and it's not entirely on his fault. He came to America to work to not work as hard.
Oh
and
yeah.
and I think that he has done an admirable job given the fact that he's pretty clear. I mean, he's also like it's like 45, his body's broken down. Like the
Right.
style that he worked, like to me, it's not all on the writing staff. It's just the nature of where he's at in his career that
Right.
I don't watch enough of modern WWE to really know. I know he's doing like a ninja thing.
Yeah.
And it looks cool. And if he
Yeah.
can get a lot, if he can get a lot of mileage out of doing less, then awesome. But you can't really like his best match in WWE was his first one. like,
Yeah.
and I don't think that his work in general has been bad, but it's been very much like he's kind of taking it easy. Which I don't blame him if his body's as
Yeah. I
broken
mean,
down
you know,
as it's made
yeah.
out to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get your money, dog.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
hmm
So, and this can be present day or past. Who would be a dream opponent for you? Who would you love to work?
Shawn Michaels.
Shawn Michaels. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was really good at working with big guys, and I'm a big guy, so he would make me look like $1 million.
Gotcha. So, what is your favorite move? Is there something you just really love doing move wise? And on the flip side of that, is there a move that you won't do or you would at least rather not do? And this can be either giving or receiving.
My spinning wheel kick is my favorite move to give, mostly because people, especially if it's an audience that has never seen me, don't expect it. And that's always a fun reaction. Even when people do expect it, it still gets a good reaction. As far as taking moves, I'm not a big fan of flapjacks. Granted, don't take them very much, but the couple times I
I
have,
was going to say, I mean,
but I have. And when
yeah.
I do, it usually doesn't go well. There's one particular match I had where I took a double flapjack, and as I'm coming down, I'm like, I don't remember how to fall this way. just my brain just exploded, and so did my shoulder because I went down on my shoulder.
Mm,
And granted, nothing was broken; it was just sore for a couple weeks. But I was like, I did not take that move again, please.
gotcha. So you've been doing this for around 8 years. So I'm sure this applies. And what hurts right now?
My knees mostly. But I don't even know if that's entirely because of wrestling. I live upstairs, so going upstairs every day, and then my car is really small, so getting in and out of my car hurts. But in terms of like wrestling injuries, nothing. There's no like super obvious like this is messed up. Luckily, especially as I've gotten older, I've kind of learned to protect myself a little more. It's funny because when I first started wrestling, I used to bump all the time. Um,
Hmm.
and it's because I didn't know any better. And now it's like, it wasn't until a couple years in where they're like, you're not supposed to when you're as big as you are. And I go, oh, but I'm like trying to keep up with everyone. And they're like, that's not your role. And I go, oh, you're right. That's not my role. Um, but I know some people look at that as me being lazy, but it's like, no, it's not lazy. It's being smart with what my package is and what my presentation is supposed to be. Um, don't get me wrong. Like, if you need me to bump around, I will. But why?
Exactly. You know,
Mhm.
because like you were just saying, as you get older, you've got to start working a smarter style, and in order to give yourself some further longevity in the ring.
Yeah. And luckily, like it's not even just like because I'm older. It's because of my size. Like I I'm lucky. It's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing in that
Hmm.
I don't have to bump as much, and my matches are pretty easy to plan out because I understand how the psychology of it works. I would hope so after all this time. The downside is that I can't go and have those indie bangers that everyone likes all the time. And like
Right.
when I'm in it, I can go, but why? Like, there's no reason for me to most of the time. Like, I mean, the
Right.
match I just had in Atlanta, it was a 6-man tag, and that was the one where I'm like, all right, boys, this is where we're just gonna do a bunch of stuff, and that's what we did, and it was super fun, and like the crowd was into it, and I had a good time. But that's definitely not what I normally do.
Gotcha. So you had said that injury wise, you've been pretty lucky over the course of your career.
Mhm.
What is the most significant injury that you've suffered either wrestling or training?
It's probably when I hurt my shoulder.
Hmm.
Uh, it was pretty hard for me to move it for a couple weeks. I went and actually wrestled the following weekend when I really shouldn't have. uh, and it's funny. I had a match with one of my friends, and I literally was like, "I'm gonna do this because I drove at the time I was living in LA, and I drove to San Diego, and I was like, I think I can do it." And I did one quarter roll just to make sure that I was okay, and I was not okay. But I had already made the drive, and I go, "All right, we're gonna have a match. It's gonna be real simple, and I'm using one arm." And that's what we did. And the match wasn't very good, but I got through it. So
Sometimes that's the important thing,
mhm.
just the show must go on, just
Yep.
get through it and move on.
Yep.
So, what is your take on the role that social media is playing as a promotional tool in wrestling?
It's the most important thing. If people aren't using Facebook and Instagram and Twitter to their maximum potential, they're wasting their time. Um, again, because I ran my own promotion, the vast majority of my promotion was all through social media, because it's a lot more work to put boots on the ground and flyer. Like, it doesn't mean you don't do that. You should do that too. But like, as a pure promotional thing, like you should be posting every day something. Because if you don't, someone else is, and you just have to
Yep.
keep putting your face out there. If you want to make it in indie wrestling, especially, like you have to find that viral thing that gets hot. Um, I tell my guys all the time because a lot of them are really bad about it, and I'm like, guys, you need to be on this. Like, it sucks. Like, honestly, if I wasn't wrestling, the only one I would keep is my Twitter because Twitter makes me laugh. but the rest of them I probably wouldn't use outside of like Facebook Messenger, just because it's an easy messaging app. But I don't particularly use either of them or any of them outside of that. I hate Instagram personally. But it's the one that's the most successful for me in terms of promotion. So it's the one I have to use the most.
Got you. Speed round. Finn Balor.
Excellent. Super good. Love that guy.
Yeah. Same here. Same here. I've enjoyed watching his career, advance over the years. I enjoyed his stuff over in Japan with Bullet Club, and he's done amazing work in the WWE system as well. So I agree with you. I think the guy really has definitely had a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, like going back to what I was saying about Nakamura in terms of like adjusting his style, like Finn Balor's done an excellent job of adjusting his style, but without slowing down as much.
Right, right. But he's also not quite as old as Nakamura either.
Yeah, and I don't
So,
think he wasn't doing the main event New Japan style for
right.
because Balor I think only was really at the top of New Japan for like a year maybe, whereas
Yeah.
Nakamura was there for almost 10.
Yeah. Yeah. So, knowing everything that you know at this point in your life, if you could give any advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Don't. I'm kidding. Mostly, so I had the weight loss surgery, the gastric sleeve surgery when I was 25. It was about a year before I started wrestling, or 24. I would have
Mhm.
probably told myself to do it sooner, because I was very resistant to it at first, and it really changed my life and made my life a lot better. As big as I am, I used to be bigger. Um, that would probably be the main thing. Definitely more of just I've always been the quote unquote bright kid that was unmotivated. I would have tried to motivate myself more than I did when when I was younger. Um, but that's pretty much it. Like, I'm a big proponent of everything in your life, you get to for a reason. So,
Gotcha. So, do you have any pre-show traditions, any things that you try to do consistently before you go through the curtain?
no, not really. Um, it used to be try not to panic. But I've gotten to the point now where I'm not nearly as nervous about wrestling as I used to be. So, no, there's really not anything in particular.
Gotcha. Something that we've done in all of these that's just been kind of fun is we've let the current guest pose a question for the next guest. And my guest last night was a wrestler from out of North Carolina by the name of Tommy Okami. And the question that he posed is, what are you doing at this moment? Well, not at this moment, but what are you doing right now to make yourself a better performer?
Uh, I mean, I consistently try to get into the school and continue training. I don't actively train as much as I used to, so I probably should. um, I don't know. There's not really anything in particular for me. Again, I'm kind of at the point now where I'm moving away from the directly performing side, so now it's more in the promotion side. So I'm
Right.
mostly it's just continuing to push, continuing to advertise, continuing to get more eyeballs, because I truly believe that the market here is strong enough that we can have a lot more success than we're having. We just need people to know we exist. So it's mostly just advertising.
Gotcha. And, since this is part of a series, do you have a question that you would like to pose to the next guest?
How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
Okay. I will. I will definitely ask that. Actually, you are the final guest before we go on hiatus for a couple of weeks for the holidays. We're actually coming back the week of January 6th.
Nice.
I'd have to look at the calendar. I'm not sure who the next victim or guest is, but yeah, I will definitely. I'll definitely ask that question.
I hope
But
it's someone who likes wood.
so, so how would you answer that? How much wood do you think a woodchuck could chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood?
42.
40, oh, yeah, life, the universe, and everything.
Got it.
Absolutely. So, with it being that time of the year, what are your top 3 Christmas movies?
Gremlins. Um, the original Grinch, the animated one. I don't like the Jim
Hmm.
Carrey one.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't either.
yeah, my wife loves it, and I'm like, please don't put this on. Um, I don't know. I'm not a big Christmas movie. I guess Die Hard, just because I guess it's a Christmas movie.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
No, Jingle All the Way, the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that one. I like that one.
I had not thought about that movie in a few years. I'm gonna have to sit down and watch that this season. That's a
It's a
good
good
one.
one. Turbo Man.
It is.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So, do you have any upcoming shows or anything at all that you'd like to give some hype to?
So I'm wrestling at MPW in Chatsworth, California on Friday. I'm in the Naughty or Nice match. Then I am not wrestling on the Primal Wrestling show in San Diego this Sunday, but again, promotion. So that's also happening, Primal Rage. But other than that, I'm done for the year after that. So
Well,
I
awesome.
just I just hit 500 matches. So
Well, that is a cool milestone.
mhm.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's, you know, not everybody can work a career on the indies and actually say that. So
Yeah,
that's something to hang your hat on.
for sure.
500. Wow. Well, anyway, Robin, thank you for your time. This has been a real pleasure. It's been fun to share a few laughs and pick your brain a little bit, and definitely consider yourself to be part of the Throwdown family. You've got a standing invitation to come back anytime you want. And for everybody that's been watching this live, thank you. For those of you that'll be seeing this in replays and such, thank you for that. If you like what we've got going here, definitely spread the word. This this thing has really taken on a life of its own. I mean, like I said, we're on hiatus for a couple of weeks now, but as things stand, I'm booked now through the first week of February. So it's the bookings are definitely coming fast and furious, and we've got some exciting things coming up in 2025. So definitely keep an eye on our socials, because we're going to be making some announcements of some stuff over the next couple of weeks. That's really going to be a lot of fun. So anyway, everybody have a wonderful night. Take care of each other, love each other, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and keep throwing down.